Hello, everybody. Here with the West Virginia CAI interest group and forming a state chapter, I hope very soon. And my name is Daniel Bennett, and I have here for our podcast today Jason Lewis, the CEO of Majerle Management, and he has some great ideas and has been very kind to come and talk to us about management, both management companies as well as an interesting product they have you manage, and then just talk about the issues all around these. So, with that, um, please introduce yourself a little bit more, and then we'll get into the conversation.
Well, Daniel, first and foremost, I'm really thrilled to be here. Really appreciate the invitation. And part of us being in attendance is to make sure that we are supporting you all in your mission to give West Virginia a voice with respect to homeowners out there, collective home ownership in the state, and doing everything that we can to promote that. And I am the aforementioned Jason Lewis with Majerle Management. We're proud, going on 40 years now of HOA management here in Maryland, the District of Columbia, and also emerging markets that we have, one of them being West Virginia.
Well, thank you very much, and we're looking forward to having you as a member of the chapter. So, thank you so much for your support and your enthusiasm for West
Absolutely.
Virginia. It's a beautiful state, and we're glad you're coming here. So,
Absolutely. We're looking forward to it.
thanks. One of the issues that I think a lot of people have trepidation about is management companies.
Mhm.
There are management companies here in West Virginia, quite often managing larger ones. We have fewer condos, perhaps, than a lot of areas, and but we have some very large ones, some with amenities, and I was just hoping you talk about that relationship between property management. You have a lot of experience with that, with boards and the communities that they manage.
So I would say, top line is that we're a reflection of what the board needs. Most management companies are able to do a little bit all, whether that's a full service contract where we're handling everything related to the administrative, financial, and operational aspects of the community. You mentioned one of the service lines that we have, which is you manage, where we're supporting more self management through just being your bookkeeper, if you will, and keep making sure that the bills are getting paid, the assessments are getting collected. The way that I talk a lot about HOA management is through the lens of, HOAs are really kind of the hybrid between they're formed like a corporate board, but they really act like a small municipality. Before we started recording, you and I were having a little bit of a repartee about that. And we see ourselves as a town manager. So, top line, our goal is to keep the trains running on time. We want to make sure that your landscaper's getting out there. We're producing financial statements. We're following up with your homeowners to make sure that they're making their payments and helping them as well. It's not just about collections and sending people off to the attorney, but it's about being supportive, guiding homeowners through the process. And then would say the administrative aspect of it is that working as a consultant, these associations get this big old rule book called the governing documents. They have questions, they're trying to absorb it. It's written in a very legal manner. And we serve as an administrative consultant to help you work through those questions, know who the right players are that can get you those answers, and then really use our expertise to say, these are what we've seen at other associations that we manage. This is what we're seeing as best practices in the industry, and really kind of be your Sherpa, if you will, to walk you through these, common but certainly unique problems that each HOA is going to face.
And that's the way it should work. Um, what problems can occur in that relationship, and
With
how
the
best to deal with them? Yeah, between
management
the
company.
well,
Um,
let's put it this way:
mhm.
HOAs, condo boards will have problems arise, and some of them are generated through various things. Would you say about that relationship?
I would say that one of the main issues you're going to find in the relationship, when I was reflecting on this for our conversation, is really a misalignment of communication cadence. So a lot of the complaints that we get from, I would say this is hunting season right now. We got a lot of people who are on the market because they're all on a calendar year. They're starting to look for if they want new management. So when I've been doing interviews and pitch meetings, a lot of the concerns that we get is I never hear from my management company. I don't know what they're up to. So there becomes a misalignment in the communication cadence of us as your business manager reporting to you on a regular set schedule of where we're at in the process, what are we doing next, and any work product that we need to share with that particular client to say, this is what we need you all to start reflecting on. Certainly, there's an assumption that, yeah, we're working on it, but we also need to, as practitioners, communicate as to where we're at in the process. So that way, it's a baseline trust. The client knows where we're at, the client knows what are our next steps. The client begins to say, hey, I know they're going to take care of this. Let me give them a little space because they've been consistently getting back to me on where they're at in the process, and I can take those reports that they're providing to the bank. But a lot of it is the deterioration of the set expectations around communication. I would say is the big one.
And what I've heard is sometimes that is sometimes driven by a manager that doesn't communicate well enough,
Mm-hmm.
but it's also sometimes who is being talked to uh, in on the board or among the whole community. So how do managers manage that communication when maybe they're mainly talking to the president? How do they make sure that they're communicating broadly so that everybody knows where they are and what they do?
I love that. So I think there's a difference between directions and communication. So to get a little wonky with you, when we write contracts for our clients, what we'll say is that we look to the HOA president as the association's chief executive to give us a directive. Hey, we want you to do XYZ. When we're communicating out, we're talking to the broader audience that is the board of directors. So all board members are equal, regardless of who's president or who's secretary. All the board members are equal. So when we're putting together our monthly management summaries, we're sending that full communication to the entire board of directors, letting them know where we're at in the process. Maybe there are particular individuals who are project managing one particular action item for the board. Maybe it's all coming from the association president, but I think there we first start with the differentiation to say we're going to look for the president to give us guidance and speak for the board fully, but we're going to constantly keep the full board of directors in the know because they're all socializing amongst themselves different tasks and action items, and they all, as directors, regardless of their officer positions, are entitled to know what's going on. So focus on your board president and your manager as that link between management and the board, but make sure you're pivoting to say everybody gets to know on the board what's going on at all times.
Thanks. What about the individual unit owner, homeowner? What is their relationship with management?
So the homeowners, certainly aren't necessarily sitting in the mix of the day to day. And for a lot of homeowners, I know that can be frustrating because they're kind of getting things after the fact. So number one, when someone calls us and asks questions, as long as they're not saying, "Hey, I want to know what's the balance of Bob Smith's account," they're constituents. They have a right to know the business. Certainly, we give our reports to the board of directors, but if the homeowner's asking what's going on, the easiest way to handle that is just to tell them what's going on. Their money that they're sending to the HOA that we're spending on their behalf for their betterment, they get a stake in that. Number two, best practices, posting those meeting minutes online. Certainly, we have online portals for our individual clients where there is a repository of the board meeting minutes. We lean in on the association secretary to take good minutes that capture what is they're discussing, what is the direction, get those online. We certainly want to invite homeowners to attend. I think Zoom's done a pretty good job in expanding the pool, actually. So individuals say, oh, I don't have to rush down to ABC Elementary School. Let me just log in. I can go off camera and I can listen to what's going on in the community. So, how we reach people in terms of 9 to 5 when we're open, and then also continuing to have a dedication of communication out to the homeowners. I do encourage newsletters. Whether the end user is going to read them or not, don't worry about that. Have the format to say, here are all the channels that we're reaching you. I was just at a conference for our technology provider, and they're doing a lot of great work with their application. I think what you're going to see in this space, actually, if I can do a little prognostication here, is you're going to see a little bit more of technology enhanced applications. So, not just a question of paying my bill, but really kind of mimicking those engagements that we're seeing on LinkedIn or Instagram. A lot of the forums that us in our personal lives are used to in terms of consuming social media, a lot of those technology companies are trying to mirror that in order to basically meet the audience where they're at, give them something that they're used to. So we see more communication coming down the line to support the technology that's already in the space, but the tried and true methods of get those meeting minutes up, get newsletters committed and consistent, and also to make sure that your management company is accessible, they're answering your questions, they're getting you to the right people.
Thanks. In terms of that software, what should an HOA be looking for in software that will help them deal with all the things they need to deal with? If you could, whether it's your product or just generally speak to that.
Absolutely. So everybody should have an online portal, number one, and that's going to give you a couple different tools. But I would say for full stop, they got to have an online portal. At the end of the day, you and I sitting on a podcast talking about HOAs may have HOAs as the forefront of our mind. We're working in this space almost every day, but for most homeowners, they're not. So we have to create avenues and channels that are easily accessible for individuals. The best way to do that, same way if you're paying your online electric bill or you're paying your mortgage, have some type of online portal where people can go and gather all the information they need. That online portal should do a couple different things. It should have a submission based aspect to it. If you're condo, you're going to deal with a lot of work orders. If you're working with an HOA, you're getting a lot of architectural applications coming into the spring through the fall. So, a way to send information, key. More important, documents. Homeowners want transparency. Homeowners want to know when are those board meetings that are coming up? What are those minutes that we were just talking about? And other documents that they can resource and look for themselves. And the last thing that I would say, which is crucial and should be first, but I want to save it for last, payments. At the end of the day, I know people may have some skepticism and think that, all of this is to try to keep people in cycle of debt. It's not about that. What it's about is maintaining the services. And the best way in terms of what we talk to with our clients is take the money however you can get it. People want to write a check, we can take the check. People want to make an ACH or an e-check, we provide avenues for that. But you want to create as many different ways that homeowners can get payments into the HOA, work with the HOA management company, get those payments in so that they stay on top of things and we can keep the trains running on time. But online payment system must have critical best way to ensure that we're getting money timely in for the association and moving those invoices along for the homeowner services.
Well, and to play devil's advocate
Mhm.
on this, some people think, oh, checks are the cheapest thing to handle. When you are thinking about communities, why is that mix of payment methods good if there's going to be, some amount taken out for transaction costs and things like that? What is the reason to do that?
So I would say this, that's a really great question. I haven't been asked that before. I would say this, top line, some homeowners will say, well, there's a 299 fee that may be for, let's say, a credit card or a percentage base. What you see in the industry is that most merchant services, so when I use my debit card, for example, at a big box retailer, that big box retailer has such a wide variety of services, platforms, that those merchant fees with MasterCard or Visa, they're already rolled into the price. What you see in the HOA space is that because there's thousands of management companies, you don't have that same kind of cohesion of a service provider. So you're seeing a lot of the costs on the banking side passed on to the individual consumer because the board's not necessarily going to take on that fee. And the management companies are a conduit for the individual clients that they're serving. So we're not taking that on. So unfortunately, those costs get passed on. Checks are really a hidden cost. Checks that are coming in require a manual process, which means that we need to have staff available to open the envelope, look at the check, code it in, and run it. Some of them get to a lockbox, certainly, which is a little bit better, but a lot of people will send their checks to the management company. So even if you're not seeing the transaction cost for an individual on the on the payment in and of itself, there are those other fees in terms of how the management company is being designed, the staffing levels that it have, which then impacts the price that we're giving the individual consumer, which may mean we need more staff. A lot of our costs are labor. We're going to have a little bit higher management fees. The other thing that I would say, even more important than that, it's about making it as passive for homeowners as possible so that they're not trying to remember. If you have auto bill pay, for example, having your HOA on auto bill pay is key. And the second thing, and we have a lot of tough conversations, Daniel, with homeowners where they'll say, I put my check in the mail on the 27th. What do you mean you guys are just getting it now on the 7th? My mom's an old USPS worker, so I'm not throwing the post office under the bus here. But if you're sending it that close via check to a lockbox that's out of state, the HOA may not give you the grace to say, well, when your payment is arriving a little bit late, we can't control the flow of mail. You may end up with late fees. So moving away from checks, certainly, look, our costs, no one's crying for a management company. I get that. But the real impact is the homeowner getting in that window of getting their payment in because we don't want the late fees. We don't want to send people to collections. That only creates animosity within the neighborhood. We want to find quick, fast solutions to get money in the door for the clients, which continue services for the HOA. So really setting up online payment systems is for the homeowner's benefit so they can kind of set it and forget it, if you will.
That's great. And with that, I assume then the finances generally are then better for the whole going forward for that. What do you think about the finances for HOAs? Where does a management company help save them money or cost them money? What is the ROI of the management company for these folks?
I would say this, it's about stabilizing more than anything. At the end of the day, for most of our clients, the cost that they're incurring is related to service vendors who have cost of living increases for their staff. Doesn't matter if it's a management company, it can be your landscaper, it can be a trash vendor. So when I've talked to clients over my career, what I've tried to tell them is that the game isn't to save money. That's that might be a fool's errand. There are ways that we can try to save you money on individual tasks. Hey, we got a handyman that does a really good hourly rate. We can package a couple things up. That's going to give you some savings, but it's very individualized. If we're talking about a budget and we're talking about the overall finances for an association, what we're trying to do, Daniel, is we're trying to bend the cost curve, which means a couple of things. We're rewarding vendors who are doing a good job with long-term contracts, 3, 5 years. Because when I was practicing as a manager, it's amazing when I can pick up that phone, talk to that vendor who's up for renewal, and say, my friend, I got a client here who's willing to sign for another 3 years. What can you do with us on that second year when it comes to that increase? Can you get us closer to zero? They sharpen their pencil up because now they have guaranteed business. I have a little bit more wiggle room because my clients allowed me to negotiate a longer term contract. And we're keeping that cost curve as low as possible because the main driver, I would say, of terms of increases that we want to see when people go, hey, how do we go up 3 or 4%? Reserve contributions, because we're putting money in the savings account, because we're keeping up with inflationary costs on potential projects that are coming down the line. We're putting money away for ourselves. And the best thing that you can look at in terms of an ROI for the homeowner is that stabilized financials mean that when you as an individual homeowner sell your unit or your house, you're going to get a little bit better buyer pool because if the HOA finances can meet FHA standards, for example, lenders have now really started scrutinizing HOA financials, especially post the 2008 financial crisis. I'm old enough to remember a lot of different loans that were going on prior to '08. Those days have certainly changed, and you're seeing a lot more scrutiny on the health of the association. So the ROI is that not only am I getting services, not only am I seeing lower percentage year over year increases, but when I decide that, hey, like anything else, it might be your home, but it's still an asset, and I'm going to command a little bit more money on that resale, I know that I have a bigger buyer pool that I can work with. And that means I'm going to drive up the price of that house at resale and get a little bit more return on my investment.
Okay. Well, that's great to be able to talk about how homeowners are going to be protected more by having thoughtful managers who can keep their community in more financial stability and knowing those types of things, whether it's reserve studies
Hmm.
and when to do them, whether it is, as you said, understanding vendor management, and presumably a manager will know more about multiple vendors, and a lot of those vendors actually are in CAI and make themselves known and probably appreciate, as you said, having customers who have a long-term vision, and then will look for some reasonable accommodation in terms of the total cost because they know it's going to be a solid contract for a set amount of years. What is that when you go to you manage? So you have that product. What are you losing? What are you gaining? Where do you think that product that you have, which is very interesting,
Hmm.
meets the needs of a community?
Absolutely. I want to touch on one point after I answer this question. When you're talking about, just kind of the finances in general, because there's something I think that gets lost in the space. But let me certainly answer the question. So, you manage is really based on taking the bookkeeping work off the board. So we've had homeowners associations say we can run our own meetings, we can do our own covenants enforcement. Hey, we might even do our own resale package. But you know what? Jane, who's been on the board for 20 years, doesn't want to cash checks anymore. So what we try to do is not only look at, full service, you get an assigned manager, we're dealing with all your vendors, we're producing your books, and we're creating facilities management plans where you're consultant. Under the You Manage program, we kind of take an a la carte approach to our services. When HOA management got started many, many moons ago, it was really an idea of a spin-off of accounting services. So the You Manage program kind of gets back to the heart of where this industry started in terms of bookkeeping and accounting services. And it also allows us to sharpen our pencil a little bit in terms of our price point for smaller associations. Because at the end of the day, the headaches of, certainly a 250 lot HOA and a 25 lot HOA are fundamentally kind of the same. You still have governance questions. You're still trying to create books. Financial statements might be a little bit more or less complex, but the baseline still is there. And what You Manage allows us today is that homeowners who have a little bit more gumption to get into the mix. My big thing when I talk to clients is to say you can pay two ways, either your dollars or your sweat equity. These are the homeowners and the board members who want to pay with their sweat equity, but say, hey, could you take care of some of the stuff that either A, we don't have the capacity and the bandwidth to take on, or B, we just think it's better for a third party who's a professional to give us those financials so that, like we were talking about before with home sales, other disclosure documents, have that professionally done for us. And this is where we can outsource. We'll talk to the landscaper. We know Joe. We can meet with him on site. But when it comes to the idiosyncrasies of the financial statements, yeah, you guys take that on.
So you mentioned one criteria is the size of the community, whether it's 25 or 500 or somewhere in between. Is there also an amenity issue as well? So the more complex the amenities also, and usually that comes with larger ones, but do you see that as part of it if you
Not
have a
really.
pool?
Surprisingly, Daniel, not really. I've seen you manage at both ends of the spectrum. So classically, a lot of small HOAs who want professional management services will sign up for it. But throughout my career, I've worked for companies that have had very large master associations, for example, who say we actually can manage it ourselves. We just need a professional accountant. So size amenities doesn't really make or break it, in my opinion. It's really a question of the sweat equity that the board wants to put into the day-to-day work of running that town that's going to decide whether or not they fit into one package. I would also say that part of our job is to be a matchmaker, but it's also to be a matchmaker of what the board is looking for. So when I'm meeting with new prospects, we're having a conversation of what are your pain points? What are the things that you're looking for support on? What do you have under control? And then based on the suite of services that we offer as a service provider, we try to match make in terms of what works best for them. But I mean, the best scenario, to be honest with you, is that you have a board that is fully engaged, has homeowner volunteers who are serving on subcommittees, not even running for the board, but just people who are serving on events to covenants enforcement. And you have a collective effort of all these homeowners who are saying, we are willing to get into the mix and we're willing to help move this neighborhood forwards because we see our investment. And we love those kind of partnerships. And that doesn't matter whether it's 25 units or 500, it's really reflecting what the energy that the homeowners are bringing into that specific community.
Great. You said you had wanted to get back to a finance.
Yeah, I did. Something that I had was thinking about when you were we were talking a little bit on the subject before is that I think one of the things that I've been trying to talk about in this industry is that we're more than just dog poop letters. And to that question that you were talking about when it comes to the ROI from homeowners, I love that because I think a lot of the times I've seen the State Farm commercials, I've seen a couple of the online reels about HOA management, and it's very covenants and enforcement heavy. We are property managers. And some of my colleagues say, oh, no, we're community managers. You got to say community managers. No, we're in property management, which means that we're in real estate, which means that we are helping homeowners with the greatest single asset that most Americans will ever have, which is their home. So we got to broaden our perspective in the industry to not say, here is the process for running a board meeting, here are the covenants. No, we need to look at the overall financial health, how we can help homeowners command higher resale values. Start getting wonky with homeowners to say, yeah, we can get into the repartee in the mix with vendor partners and bend your cost curve. Our friends on commercial do this really well. Our friends in multifamily do this really well. And something that whenever I'm on a platform like this, I try to make sure that we're highlighting this is asset management. It's not just covenants enforcement and sending out these annoying violation letters. This is asset management. And the more we see ourselves as asset managers and our partners with our homeowners, not just our board members, but also with our homeowners to protect and enhance the value of those homes, it's not only a better experience for the engagement, but selfishly, as a business owner here, it's about individuals who are that are working for me feeling purpose and mission in their work and doing what they can on a day-to-day basis to serve their clients. It's a much higher calling when you look at it that way.
Hmm. That is a great perspective. And we may in a future episode, and I know with other people, talk about the community aspect of it, which is, these are micro municipalities and that, but that aspect of it of property management, and it's community management, it's property management, um, that idea that these are the greatest assets for most people in their lives. And quite often, I have a feeling that they don't understand the best ways to manage that. And I'll be talking, I hope, with some real estate folks who then go into these communities. And uh, we, I've heard some horror stories here in West Virginia about them not even knowing who the board is, being able to get all those documents that are necessary for sales and things like that. That probably diminishes the value of those homes. So, really, if you have a good management company who does property management, it seems as if those things will be easier, and it's maybe hard to know the value for resale, or just knowing what that equity is that you're building on over decades in some case. So speak to that. Is that sort of what you're getting at?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I love partnering with real estate agents. Real estate agents are the ones who are getting us their ear to the street. They know what's going on. They can help you. Look, real estate is all about consultative services as well. So when we see ourselves as part of that larger family of real estate services, it closes the loop on everything. Why are you buying in an HOA? You're not just buying in an HOA for the uniformity of everybody's fence looking the same. You're buying in an HOA because the uniformity of everybody's fence looking the same means that it's going to be more attractive to that buyer. That means when I show up and talk to my board of directors and hear what the financial condition of the community is, I know when someone looks at my property, they say they want to go under contract, they get that resale document, they look and they say, hey, the HOA is running great. We definitely want to buy in here. We know that that pool that the real estate agent showed us is going to continue to be maintained. So we can't segment ourselves off. Certainly, we have a very specialized segment of the larger real estate industry. And certainly there are nuances of governance and administration that, if you're running an apartment building, people aren't voting whether or not they're going to raise rent, right? But it's still all the same base fundamentals of running a building, brick and mortar, having good, strong financials at the baseline of everything you're doing. We need to advocate more, not just look at the covenants enforcement side and how to run a board meeting, but really broaden it because that's where we're going to reach homeowners. That's where we're going to get people to see what's in it for me. What am
Mhm.
I getting out of all these assessments that I'm paying on a monthly, quarterly, or annual basis? What's in it for you is that we are all linked up together because better looking neighborhoods command better resale values, which means people can move in and out and feel comfortable, which means happier homeowners, which means when people call me, they're satisfied because they're living in a place that makes them smile when they come home versus feeling like there's a contention where they're not getting what they want. So it's important for us to speak to that aspect of the work, and I don't think it's something that's highlighted enough.
Well, thanks. I want to get into a different issue,
Mm-hmm.
which is the need for education.
Mm-hmm.
And we met at the Virginia Leadership Retreat,
Mm-hmm.
and that was a great opportunity, not just to network and meet people who are in CAI, but also to get continuing education credits and that go towards those credentials that you have at the end of your name. And I want you to talk a little bit about that. But that is for the managers, but their CAI also has board management training.
Yes.
Just want you to talk about the importance of this education, both for the managers and potentially for the board members.
Oh, absolutely. So I would say that I am guilty as many where I don't necessarily read the instructions before I start diving into the thing that I bought. And I can tell you that doesn't always work, especially if it's a little bit more complicated. I think the same thing you can be analogized to HOAs where, a lot of people get on the board for a reason. It's not just that they want to show up at these meetings and at 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock sometimes and vote on very mundane contracts. They're getting on there because they see something that's not going right. They want to fix a problem. They want to maybe lend their voice. What they don't realize is that there's more to it than perhaps that initial issue that they observed once they get on the board. So CAI does a tremendous job in terms of empowering homeowners through knowledge. It's the breakdown of, we have the benefit on the management side of working in this day to day in many different venues for the clients that we serve. So we get to see it, we get to practice it. As you mentioned before, there's a whole level of designations and step ups that managers can have. CAI does a great job with that, but they also do a really great job for board members where they're focusing on baseline, how to just run an HOA or what is an HOA, to stepping things up with respect to contracts, understanding facilities management. So you also see now we do a lot of business in Maryland. Some of the counties have started to roll out online training as well for board members. In some counties, it's required. That's a great supplement, but continuously getting involved, listening to podcasts just like this, and just expanding that knowledge base is only going to help and enhance because the burnout that is not just on the manager side, but also on the board member side. The burnout is when you don't feel that you're making progress because you're diving into something that you don't necessarily have 100% understanding what it is that you're tackling. So it's paramount. And a lot of these resources, a good YouTube search will get you into the mix. A lot of management companies, such as ours, for example, will put items online and touch on subject matters. CI does a tremendous job of offering classes that homeowners can go to. We encourage all of our board members to do that. We try to regularly remind them of where they can get access to these classes, but just keep learning, keep researching, and more importantly, especially the live classes, it's amazing the natural conversation that can occur in the room with like-minded individuals who are facing similar situations. Get into a repartee and you learn something. Every time I go to one of those classes, I learned at least one thing that I didn't know before, and that's helping our business, and that's also making us better managers. And the same can be applied for our board members as well.
Great. Well, thank you. Before we wrap up, I want to ask you if you had any things that you thought about that you would like to add, any issues or anything like that.
Not at this time, except for we're all in when it comes to getting a chapter up and running in West Virginia. I will do everything I can on our end to support those efforts. Every state, or at least certainly expanding regions, reflecting who the homeowners are in those individual states or those particular regions is paramount. And if we're talking about representation and empowering individuals, the more we can do to support those in West Virginia with their own chapter, we're all in. We're proud to be waiting our application formal approval. So I'm not just a candidate anymore, but we are actually bona fide members of the West Virginia chapter and continue to lend our voice because what you're doing is great. And and also CAI supporting you all as well to move that along is fantastic. So the more we can do to educate homeowners, whether it's West Virginia, Maryland, Virginia, or DC, wherever it is, this is the kind of stuff that helps people make better communities, make better neighborhoods.
Well, thank you very much. Again, thank you, Jason Lewis, CEO of Majerle Management. Why don't you tell folks if they're interested how to get in touch with you and your company about the services you provide?
Absolutely. For anybody out there who says, hey, we'd like to chat with this fella, you can reach us a couple different ways. Online, www.accessmmimaryisaac.com. You can shoot me an email, jlewis, Lewis, at accessmmi.com, or feel free to pick up the phone, 301-220-1850. Again, 301-220-1850. We'd love to chat with you.
Wonderful. And we'll include that contact info below when this is posted up. Again, Jason, thank you so much for doing this. And thank you
Appreciate
for
the time, sir.
committing to do this in the future. We really,
Absolutely. We
really
got a lot
appreciate
to unpack.
it. Okay. Thanks so much.
Thank you.